Hey, Birkett here, along with Carlos Monarrez for our annual Christmas edition of the Picks, Carlos. And look, usually we do this together. We're sitting around in Allen Park, where right now there's a lot of Corona going around, I guess, COVID. So we glad we're not there. But usually we're sitting together. You're giving me Christmas presents. I'm pretending like I meant to get you a Christmas present, and I didn't. But anyways, we have to do this virtually this year, and it's been a holiday tradition for us to hand out gifts to Lions players, people on the staff, people associated with the team. Usually we pick them out of a hat, I think, but hey, we're not around this year to do it together. So we're just gonna give out a couple presents that some awards that we'd like to see to people. So we'll get into our prediction here in a second, and we'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there is this outbreak going around right now. The Lions have a number of coaches that are quarantined, so we don't know their status for Saturday's game against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but NFL spokesman said the game is still going on. So we're going to plow ahead with the picks. So let's start with gifts, Carlos. Let's give out 3 each. All right. I know we sort of wing this, or I sort of wing it, right? We don't always plan ahead, but 3 each. You can start, my man. First one, you can give it to anyone you want, anyone associated with the Lions organization. Let's hear it. What do you got?
All right, let me see. This gift, open it up. Oh, okay. There we go. The first gift is to Lions fans. And it's going to be 2 more losses. So they can start thinking like they should and hopefully get a quarterback, get somebody to replace Matthew Stafford. I think that this offseason is going to be very interesting. I'll make you a bold prediction right now. Santa Carlos will say that something funny is going to happen with Matthew Stafford and the rumor mill, kind of like last year. And there's going to be some rumors. There's going to be some people, perhaps in the Stafford household, who are probably upset about rumors about him being traded. You can probably recall what happened last year. So I think we're going to see something like that. We have people like Carson Wentz complaining, if I'm not the starting quarterback, I don't want to be here, trade me. There's going to be maybe some stuff like that. So it's time for the Lions to move on. And the best way to move on is to have a higher draft pick, to get a quarterback that can fit your team, that you can move forward with. That doesn't mean Stafford is not going to be here next year, but it allows that process to begin for the new regime.
I think Lions fans will probably appreciate the losses, Carlos. I mean, there's a lot of them that are thinking that way right now, that do want to see this team tank, for lack of a better word, or at least lose out. So that way they do get better draft positioning. Look, I'm going to give my first gift to the owner, Sheila Ford Hamp, and it's just going to be some foresight to pick a good head coach, a good general manager, a good tandem to lead this team, this organization into the future. Because look, you and I have covered this team for a large part of the last 20 years. I mean, not the full 2-decade run since Matt Millen came aboard, but it's been rough for Lions fans. It's been rough for the organization. I mean, 4 winning seasons, 3 playoff appearances, since the turn of the millennium. And, frankly, there's been a lot that's gone wrong, and a lot of it has just been trusting the wrong people for far too long, as we've talked about here before. And so I think there's, something to build on here. There are some good pieces offensively. Whether Stafford is part of that or not, remains to be seen. I'm with you. I do think they have to address the quarterback position at some point here in the very near future, just to have a long-term plan at the most important position on the field. But I think if they go out here the next couple of weeks and they find, the right head coach, the right general manager, whoever that tandem is, to maybe get some success, bring some success here. I think, look, as we've always said, right, that coach, if they have some success, that quarterback, whoever it is, they might be able to run for mayor or governor one day, because fans here love it so much. So a little bit of foresight coming Sheila Ford Hamp's way to pick the right people to lead this team into the next decade.
I think if the coach got 1 playoff win, I think there'd be a parade for him the next day. I'm pretty sure that would.
It's amazing. I was thinking about that with the expansion of 7 teams, where it's just maybe, those playoff wins, like really 1 playoff win, but hey, you get in the dance, you win the game, next thing you know, like you got a shot. But it's 1 playoff win, 1, when you can go 9-7 a lot of years and make it in. It's crazy. All right, what's number 2? Who's gift number 2 for you? I like how you're pretending to pick some, like we usually do. So go ahead.
Here it is. All right. My next one is I'm going to say for a Christmas gift, a holiday gift for Romeo Quara. He's had such a really good season amid a lot of difficulties, and he's the guy that I don't know if they're going to be able to hold on to him. I mean, he's going to be a free agent. They're not going to be able to franchise him in all likelihood because they're probably going to have to franchise Kenny Galladay. I hope that they keep him, but if they don't keep him, I hope he goes to a team that appreciates his skill set, that gives him a chance to do what he can do. He's obviously closing in on double-digit sacks. He's been such a playmaker. What a lot of fans didn't get to see this year because they can't be at games is, I'd watch a lot of times in games when they're playing at home, and after he'd come off the field, even if he didn't make a sack or whatever, he was doing a lot of stuff, a lot of the dirty work, a lot of the, setting the edge, a lot of things like that. And guys you could tell, like the guys who know football, obviously the players, they were really congratulating him a lot when he was coming off the field, knowing that he was leaving everything out there. So not only is he playing at a high level, he's working at a high level, he's doing all the little things. He's a guy who doesn't have a big name on the national stage, but he's a guy I hope somebody appreciates him, gives him a job, gives him an opportunity, gives him a big contract, and he's able to do, a lot more and, go up in his career from here.
I'll second that because I think Romeo's been an extremely valuable player. A couple of years ago, Carlos, I remember watching all the sacks that he had, and I kind of came away from it. It's one of those like off-season film study projects, right? And I kind of came away from it saying, a lot of these were coverage sacks. And I don't know how much he did on his own. And this year, I think he's been their best player, in a lot of ways. I mean, not only doing it defensively with all the sacks, but, playing a lot on special teams too. He's a 4-down player for him. So very valuable. I'll second your gift there. You're spending the money on it, but I'll sign my name to the card on that one too. I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the ball though for my next gift, and I'm going to give it to Jeff Okudah because look, number 3 pick in the draft. It's been a rough year for him. I'm just going to give him some good health. Some a surgery that went correctly. And improve 2021 because look, he doesn't need to be a Pro Bowler next year, but it was a rocky year. And, I don't know that through no fault of his own, sort of like, Eric Ebron to Aaron Donald, he's always going to be living in the shadow of whatever quarterbacks the Lions could have drafted there. But I still think he can be a good player in this league. As we've said all along, it's too, the guy's played 11 games. It's too early to write him off. So give him some good health, give him the right mindset, maybe give him a scheme that works for him. And I think this one would have worked for him. It just didn't early on. And I think he can still be a good player. And so for his sake, for the Lions' sake, so we're not always living in the ghosts of drafts past, let's give that to Jeff Okudah so that he has some success going forward here in his career in Detroit.
Yeah, it's going to be an important, and I second that, and I worry about him for 2 reasons. That, when you have a difficult first year and then you have a coaching change and you still have COVID going on, man, this is just hard. And this is a position that's hard to play to begin with. And then you have all these things being thrown at you. I feel bad for him. He's almost certainly going to get, new coach and everything. Maybe, I'm not saying that's going to hurt him and close the book on him, but I hope he's able to, something that I hope he talks to TJ Hawkinson, and Hawkinson tells him, bro, just don't worry about where you're drafted. I didn't care. Nobody cared. There's a lot of bad history here. And there isn't really for quarterback for Lions because they've had Slay, but just don't let that weigh on you. You do the best you can. Forget about it. There's going to be a lot of talk about expectations your second year, but just you do you, get healthy, right. Get right. And unfortunately, Okudah's a guy who thinks a lot. So he maybe thinks too much in some cases. But I hope he's able to move beyond that. He's a guy he's your grinder, the guy who just exists to play football and play it well and study it. So I hope he does have a better second season.
Not a lot of bad cornerback history, but it was Terry Fair over Randy Moss about 22 years ago. So Lions fans will never forget that one either. But you're right. New coach, new GM, who knows how they felt about Jeff Okudah last year and what their plans are for him in the future. All right, number 3. What do you got for your third gift you're handing out this Christmas? I love how you just picked a random box that's sitting next to you, by the way. Usually we throw them in a hat, right? Something, and, you know, go ahead. It's like
I didn't have a lot of prep.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of prep time this year. Santa Carlos was a little rushed, Dave. Sorry, COVID. Yeah, so this is prepare yourself. It's a little fresh. It's a
Uh-oh.
little tender. A special teams coach, a good special teams coach.
They had one. Wait, did I say
They
that?
had one. They had one. I believe they did. This is, and mostly this is in tandem with Jack Fox, because Jack Fox had such a great year, such a special year. Probably had the best year of any player, right, for his position. So it was just a pleasure to watch him punt all year. And, I'm kind of a specialist guy. I've always liked the specialists, going back to Hansen and Nick Harris and those guys. I've always just kind of hit it off with them. Our friend Matt Prater, our smelling salt buddy. So I have a soft spot for the specialists, and Fox was great. I didn't get to know him very much because we weren't in the locker room, but it was cool. It was I haven't seen a specialist perform that well in a while. And it's going to be hard. The same thing with Okuda. He's going to get a new position coach. It hopefully wouldn't matter too much to him, like his technique is his technique, but somebody who's able to keep the coverage units, because let's face it, punting, a lot of it comes down to your coverage units. If you don't have guys who can cover, it doesn't matter how far or how well you kick the ball, if they're letting the dude run it back or whatever, it's all for naught. So I hope that he gets, the coach that works for him, keeps him going on a track upward, has a few more Pro Bowl years. He's still a young guy. So it'll, I hope they make, that's part of this whole thing, man. They got to get it right. There's a lot of pressure on the organization now. You got 3 Pro Bowlers on your team. Yeah, that was, I hope new coach hopefully helps Jack Fox.
I was gonna say maybe for Fox's sake, a new regime that values special teams the way Bob Quinn and company did too, because they, obviously sunk some resources into that in terms of spending on specialists, and that certainly could help. And Carlos, just to look, since this is the first time we're shooting one of these since Braden Combs was fired. Sorry, I pronounce it Combs. Look. I do think he's a good coach. He's a young guy. Players certainly responded to him. You could see, the way they spoke out on social media. You can't go rogue on a call like that, in a game, in a critical part of the game. Still haven't heard Braden's story. You got my number, Braden. So if you want to share it, but now look, I think he will land on his feet somewhere. Hopefully that doesn't happen again and it doesn't haunt him forever. But I do think he was. He did some good things with the special teams unit this year. And if they do need a new special teams coach, can we bring Joe Marciano back or John Bonamego? I know John's with the Rams right now. Joe, I don't think Joe is working anywhere. So bring one of those guys back for our sake. So,
guys that Dave Birkett was close to. Yes, that's definitely who we want. No ulterior motives.
No ulterior motives. Number 3, my third gift, and I'm burying the lead here. This one's for Matthew Stafford. And look, I don't know if this is going to happen in 2021, 2022, or some point in the future, but I want him to land in a good spot because I do, Carlos, we've talked about this before, right? And I think there are a lot of people out there who maybe don't get it. Why do you want to get rid of Stafford? He's the best thing we have, right? Look, Stafford's a good player. He really is. And he's a very talented quarterback. And he's the best quarterback that this franchise has had in like 60 years. No one is arguing that. But the fact of the matter is that if you're embarking on a rebuild and you have some money that you're going to have to spend at the quarterback position down the road, and depending on what size of the rebuild, if you don't think you're ready to win now and you got so much work to do it on defense and at the receiver spot and elsewhere, maybe it is time to get a young guy. So moving on from Stafford, in my eyes at least, has more to do with maximizing the value of the draft pick that you have, because you shouldn't be having top 5 draft picks every year. And it has to do with looking ahead and planning for the future. So, but that being said, for Matthew Stafford, I want a great landing spot for him because, I think when you watch him play, Carlos, the grit that he plays with, the guttiness that he plays with, sometimes some of the things he's fought through, you have to respect what he's done on the field in that regard. And his teammates certainly do. And, frankly, I think most Lions fans would feel the same way, that maybe if he gets out of Detroit, maybe he can win a little bit. Obviously it didn't happen here, hasn't happened in the first 12 years here. So if he goes to look, I'm just throwing these names out there, right? New England's going to need a quarterback. The Saints. I mean, there's a lot of good organizations that will need a quarterback. And for Matthew Stafford's sake, my gift to him would be landing in one of those good situations whenever the time comes for him to finish his career somewhere else.
You know, I do agree with you on that part. The question I have, you know, and I wonder, for Stafford's longevity, let's say, you know, the popular thinking is like, well, okay, if he goes to play for a good team and whatever, and he has a lot of support from the defense and from, you know, whatever, it's a complete team. They're just missing a quarterback, you know. But the other question is like, isn't it almost better for him to go to a bad team, you know, so that like, well, we got to build around Stafford and we got to help him, and he's the guy who's, you know, going to plug some holes and he'll make up. Because if you're in a good team and if, let's just say, things don't work out, that's a problem for Stafford. If he's the problem, if he's not because if he goes to a good team, he's going to be seen as the missing piece, and you got to come up big if you're the missing piece. There's no more excuses of this or that, or I'm hurt, or I'm gritty and I'm tough, you know, like you gotta step up. And that's, I think the narrative for the Lions has always been that he's had absolutely no pieces. He's just been one guy out there by himself. No 1,000-yard rusher and Reggie Bush, no Calvin Johnson, no first-round draft pick tight ends, no, you know, I think that's been kind of the weird narrative about Stafford, which is totally untrue. You know, he had a great defense in 14, all these things. We won't get into the whole, you know, the whole arc of Stafford's career, but you and I have discussed this many, many times. You know, I think he's definitely gotten the benefit of the doubt nationally. Locally, I think we've seen a lot more about why he hasn't been great. You know, he has a lot. He's one of these quarterbacks. So I think about this more and more as he gets older is, what will people say about Matthew Stafford in Detroit in 10 years, 15 years? They'll say, why didn't it work? Like, how good? Wasn't he good? Wasn't he? It's going to be a complicated discussion, and it's not going to be, you know, I think more and more as we get away from his time after he's done, it's not going to be as easy as, well, he was never he never had the pieces, because you're going to look back at all this time and say, he had some pretty good players. He had a Pro Bowl tight end. He had a Hall of Fame receiver. He had, you know, like, you're going to look back at the pieces, you know, Sue might be in the Hall of Fame. He had a Hall of Fame defensive tackle, you know, it's not going to add up as much as right now, where it looks like you can just dismiss everybody who ever played with him and said, well, you never really had. Kenny Golladay is going to probably be a really good player for them. So his legacy will be a little bit different. You know, and in 5 years after he retires, you're going to be up there. I'm sure you and Dan Orlovsky are going to be lobbying Pete Schrager for his Hall of Fame first ballot candidacy, I'm sure. But yeah, I actually am rooting for him to go to a Pittsburgh or whatever, really good team. And let's see when there's no more excuse, when you have the pieces, when you have the running game, when you have the defense, when you have the really good coach, when you have the culture, when you have everything, and maybe he can win playoff games and maybe get them to a Super Bowl. I mean, you know, I think it'd be interesting to see that.
I guess that would solve the debate once and for all if he went to a good team. So, but you know, there's a lot of organizational ineptitude that the Lions have had over the years that I think has contributed to his struggles here, or his lack of wins here.
I have one question: is you know, doesn't a really good quarterback not need every single thing in place to still play really well? I mean, look at Deshaun Watson. You know, that team is not good right now. He's playing really well for the Texans. You know, he doesn't. I mean,
but we've said that about Stafford at times too, right? That look, he's playing well, but the organization still stinks, or they're not winning enough games, and that's what Deshaun. I mean, that's what's happening in Houston. You know, they have what, 4 wins, 5 wins? I forget. I think I don't know what they are. Whatever they are, it's the same thing. Where you look at it and you say that's a really good quarterback, but they have some other issues.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put Stafford on Deshaun Watson's level this year, but it's kind of similar. But I think it's I don't know. I mean, I think Stafford's not at that level. I mean, and I think there's a lot of times. I mean, like one great example is like this last week with everybody's piling on the defense. You know, 41 points, whatever it was, 42 point. You know, it was, oh my God, the defense. Yeah, and twice I mean, this is situational, but they had to work on short fields. You're going to give up a touchdown, or at least, I mean, that's not all. Like the defense is not good, but they're not 42 points bad. I mean, they're Dave, when you're starting on a short field in the 36-yard line, come on. I mean, what are you going to do? You're already shorthanded.
It's 46 points bad, and I don't know. The defense is not very. I mean, look, we've talked about it before, right? Yes, Stafford has thrown some bad picks this year, and you're certainly right. Some of the situations, I mean, a couple of their fumbles were obviously in the red zone this past week, but certainly those things, they all contribute to the defense's struggles. But I just don't think there's much talent on defense right now. And I'm not saying Stafford is playing at Deshaun Watson's level. I just, the defense has some serious issues right now.
Yeah, I know for sure. I mean, there's a lot of problems with the defense. I just think that Stafford doesn't get. I mean, like when he'll throw a pick six, or he'll do a 3-play drive in the third quarter, or whatever it is. I mean, it's all excused because in garbage time he throws a touchdown or something, and it's like, well, look at his stats. He did okay, completed 65% of his passes, and like I think for him, a lot of the. I don't think he's had. I think he's had a lot of problems this year, and he hasn't. Other than Kenny Golladay, he really that offense has not really been shorthanded.
DeAndre Swift for a couple games.
Yeah, I mean, you missed him for a couple games. I mean, you're not gonna have 16 games of health from every player. I mean, but you've got Hawkinson.
Does that count?
No, it doesn't count. That was probably addition by subtraction, but. Pro Bowl center, Pro Bowl tight end, whatever, really good rookie running back, Adrian Peterson. I mean, they've put a lot of money into this offense, and I think it underperformed for where it came from last year. And don't forget, I mean, he won the Birkett, Pete Schrager half-season MVP last year, so he did not perform to that level this year. He came far from it, so that was a disappointment. I think that was one other reason why they didn't play well or didn't perform well as a team this year. Is they were counting on Stafford to have and the offense have another big year, and they didn't.
I'm glad. I'm just glad I have a trophy that I can hand out, the midseason MVP award every year. All right, that'll do it for our gifts. There you go, right there, right? Tiny little MVP trophy. Is that what it is? Let's
there you go, Stafford.
Yeah. Let's end this with a couple picks. Carlos, not the kind that Matthew Stafford every once in a while throws, but let's end this with some predictions. Saturday game this week, Tom Brady in town for maybe his last time as a pro. I know you got a story coming out on Tom Brady here the next couple of days. Look, we don't know what's going on with the COVID situation with the Lions. They're still extremely shorthanded on really on both sides of the ball. I mean, their offensive line is beat up without a number of defensive starters. I think we probably know, everyone knows where we're going to go with these predictions, but you hit it first. What do you got happening on Saturday?
Tampa Bay comes to town. I don't know about the Bucs. They're kind of hard to figure out. They're not great. I mean, the passing game is pretty good. And, obviously they've got Brady and Gronk, and now Antonio Brown's playing well. Ronald Jones, pretty good running back, closing in on 1,000 yard, but on defense are not as good. But they got they got a bunch of sack guys. They got Shaq Barrett, JPP, Devin White, it's just like I don't understand. They should be better than it looks like. If you look at their statistics, I'll be honest, I really haven't seen them play much. I don't know what the issue is with this team, but they're certainly playing better than the Lions right now. Brady hasn't had a ton of success, I think, in Detroit. Like, he's had good games and bad games. It's not like he comes here and owns the Lions. So, but I think they're too much for the Lions at this point. I mean, I think they'll win handily. It'll be something 28-20, something like that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I just think ultimately as schizophrenic as the Bucs have been at times this year, playing well for stretches, playing terribly for stretches, they're just a better team right now. They have more players available, good players available to them than the Lions do, and I don't think this week, the last couple of days, have helped the Lions at all. I mean, obviously the firing of Braden Combs and then the everything that's going on with COVID not being able to practice on Tuesday, even though it was going to be a walkthrough, and who knows what coaches will be there, and sort of everything that's really gone on here in the last, 72 to 96 hours, I think, works against the Lions. And ultimately, I think they've still got enough pieces on offense that are going to keep this game close, right? Stafford, and if Ragnow and Decker was questionable on the injury report, and or a limited participant on the injury report, they're not going to have Galladay, so I still think they can do enough on offense to keep it close, but it'll be like last week's game, maybe without the big turn at the end where things just get completely out of hand, where they seem like they're within striking distance, but you never really feel like they're in danger of winning the game. So ultimately, I think this game is going to be, it's kind of a weird score, but I've got it Tampa 33, Lions 27.
27. Okay. All right. You really believe
probably a missed extra point or something rather than a couple field goals. We'll see, but Matt Prater's had a great season too. So.
Yeah, this is a weird one. But you know what, Dave? I think that I think maybe you're right. The game's going to be a little bit closer, and Lions have a better chance because under Darrell Bevell, the team is so happy right now, Dave. They're all just singing Kumbaya. They're listening to music. All that feel good. Oh my God, they got rid of a really mean coach to them. There's a lot of unity on this team. I think they're going to pull together. I think I've read a lot of your stories and the rest of the media. Man, this is such a fun one for all under Darrell Bevell team. I think they'll all band together, don't you think? Isn't it? They'll play some music at practice. Everything will be fine. It'll be no problems with coaches doing weird things and going rogue or anything like that, right? That was the problem before.
Look, as I told you, I think the a big issue here is just that everyone in the organization sees the end is here, and so they're just sort of like, well, yeah, my time's done. I need to go do my own thing, or I'm not, you're not my boss, or I'm not I'm not going to be working for this organization here in 3 weeks. So I'm sort of going down my own path, and when the playoffs officially get pulled out from under you. When things look as hopeless as they have, I do think that tends to lead people to, kind of go off on their own. And this has nothing to do with playing music or anything like that at practice. And it has nothing to do with, the leadership before, the people that brought them in. It has nothing to do with the people that are in charge now. I just think that's where we're at in this season based on the events of the last few weeks, that everyone knows it's time. I mean, look, if you could press a button and end the season right now, I think there's a lot of people in the organization that would do that, right? Like, all right, we've had enough. We've had our fill of 2020, like just from everything from COVID to everything that's gone on the field and in the building. Like, it's just time to end it and move on and, bring a whole new regime in a matter of weeks. That's going to happen.
So this is, and I wrote this the other day, this is why I'm not in favor of firing coaches midway or into the season, because you get this kind of weird stuff that happens. And let's face it, I mean, the COVID thing, we don't know that much about it, but it's dangerous. I mean, that is literally dangerous for people. I don't like it. And is this not, because we've had so few regime changes, and I don't know if you know much about how it's gone on in other places, but just is this an indictment on Darrell Bevell that he has not been able to, gather the team and say, listen, you so-and-sos, we're not messing around, we're going to keep doing things this way, that way, whatever. I mean, was he not able to marshal the troops? I'm just asking, I don't know. I mean, if you put in another guy, if someone,
I told you this lovingly the other day, right? Your defense of Matt Patricia, even this backhanded defense right here, it's like Donald Trump still contesting the election, right? Like, it's enough. We're done with it. Like, we've heard from you. Like, get on, right? Matt Patricia's not here anymore, all right? Donald Trump, you're not the president anymore. Like,
no. I don't. It has nothing to do with Patricia. I'm just asking about.
It does, Carlos?
Is it? No. Forget Patricia. It has nothing to do with. I'm saying for Bevell's chances to go forward. I mean, is this not a little bit of a black eye on like? He's going to have to explain, like,
sure,
what with Coombs and what happened with the COVID thing, and how did you let 42 points get put on you, and
I think there's some valid questions that maybe people will have to ask, right? That things have unraveled here, obviously, in the last 7 days or whatever it's been, but I think that's my own read, right? I think it's about the situation. I think it's more an indictment on those people who aren't pulling in the right direction, doing the right things. And ultimately, like, yes, certainly Darrell Bevel's going to have to answer for those at whatever his next stop is, right? How did things go bad in that last week or whatever? But we're talking about COVID here, right? Like, I don't know who got it, like how it got spread, like, but I don't think there's anyone really to blame for COVID. I mean, we're in a pandemic, so whether we know it's one player and one staff member that had it, right? So whether a practice squad player at that who wasn't, on the trip, I don't believe. I could be mistaken about that. There were some practice squad players on the trip, but I don't know if he was there. Let me erase that. I don't know if he was there. I shouldn't say I don't believe he was on the trip. I don't know if he was there. I did not see him personally. But you don't know how a pandemic spreads. And so anything related to COVID, like, I hate to say I give people a pass on, but like there's no, I don't know. It just, I can chalk that up and I can ignore that part, because even if a coach, and I reported this, right, that there was a coach that wasn't wearing his tracking devices, right, one of the defensive assistants, there was another one that had a meeting in his office, and you're not supposed to do that. But you get to a point where you get so comfortable with it, and I think we all live this, where maybe you're like, I don't need my mask when I'm talking to my neighbor, or my kids, it's the same thing, right? Hey, I'm just running around with my friends. Well, you're right. And you get so comfortable with it, especially after all these months, but you still got to stay to this. And it's just a pandemic life that we're living. So things related to COVID, I'm not putting that on anyone's ledger, because I think that's the time that we're living in. I think you're right that those questions will still have to be asked by prospective employers. But to me, that's the COVID thing is something that I can look beyond.
Yeah, I'm just wondering this, just because, and I kind of like Bevel. I hope he does kind of get a chance to, like, from the beginning, lead his own team. He's a pretty good offensive coach, so I'd like to see him. I think seems like a nice guy. I think the players would like playing for him. But just that whole institutional control, do you have the gravitas? Do you have the Tom Cruise in you to be able to yell at people and, this is not happening, we're creating a job? No. Sometimes you got to be, and this has nothing to do with anybody else. Sometimes you got to be a mean jerk. Sometimes you have to have that in you. Sometimes, especially in this office, just that kind of thing of, well, maybe just, hey, it's all COVID. There were some coaches and whatever who were checked out, and when you're doing vetting, this coach had a certain history of doing certain things and whatever it is. But I just wonder for Bevel's sake, just.
So I just want to make 2 points on that. All right. Because number one, as when it comes to the Braden Combs situation, my understanding is that there were some of these incidents that were sort of building, not going rogue like that in a play call, but there were some, this was why he was fired was not about that one play call. That was like the tipping point. Right. And it was things that had built up to that point. And I think players liked him. I think he's a good coach, but for whatever reason, his style was not well received by others in the building, some others in the building. He did have some friends over there, people who respect him and the work that he did, but some others in the building. And so I think this was not just something that happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks. This was something that had built up over the course of the season, that now with Matt Patricia not there, and then, the culture that you had talked about, that you had feared with Spielman coming in and wanting to institute this, and Rod Wood, the culture that they've talked about now with Matt Patricia not there and them going in a completely different direction. I think that gave them the push to go down that road and say, you know what, you're not going to be a part of this for the future. This was the tipping point. Let's get on with this now, right? You're just not going to be a part of it now, because you're not going to be here in the future. And then your point about Bevel and being a leader, I think that was probably the one question, and maybe why he didn't get more looks as a head coaching candidate during his days in Seattle, right? Like, could he command the room? That sort of question that you hear about people all the time, right? The Scott Linehan thing, right? Like, how is his presence going to be received? But I will tell you this, Carlos, I sort of see it, a different way than you do. Like I which is no surprise, I guess, right? But but I think number one, like, the fact that he's strong enough to make that move to say, you know what, you went rogue, you went against me, like, you don't deserve a spot on my staff anymore. I think that speaks to who he is as a leader. And I think the fact that even though they've been, the last 2 games have not gone well, finished well, but I think the fight that they've shown in some of those games, the way that the offense is played, the players have responded to him. I think that does show that, maybe some of those questions about the way that he could carry a room, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's answered those in some ways just because of the way players are responding to him. So I think your points are valid, but I sort of see it from a different perspective in that I think he's answered some of those questions a little bit more. And that does not mean he's going to be the head coach of the Detroit Lions full time. Certainly don't think that to be the case. But I think if you take a step back and look objectively at everything that's gone on, you can say, you know what, Daryl's actually done some things to help himself as a coaching candidate.
That's fair. And let's remember this. I don't want to, we're not going to get into it now, but as we talk after the season about coaching searches, let's remember to talk about culture and Spielman, because there's a lot of points that need to be brought up about that as they go forward. So, but yeah, that's a fair defense.
Certainly something that will weigh heavily into their decision, or at least they've said will weigh heavily into their decision when they make these next two hires. So got plenty of time to cover that, and we got a game, I guess we got to cover at some point this week too. Lions against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Saturday. Tom Brady, maybe his last game at Ford Field. So get your tickets or not watch it on TV since you can't be there. Carlos and I will be there, and we will have all the coverage as always on Freak.com. That'll do it for us. Merry Christmas if you celebrate that. Happy holidays if you don't. We appreciate all your viewership and friendly emails and tweets and everything else over the course of the year. So for Carlos Monarrez, I'm Dave Birkett, Freak.com.